everyone, welcome in to the Gridiron Nation Online, our web show we do every week as we kind of catch up from a week ago and get you set for the Buckeye game upcoming, which this weekend the Buckeyes open the Big Ten and they open their first road. Well, I guess they open the road schedule. Yeah, that's the way to say it. Going to Indiana this weekend. Coach Bill Conley joins me here. We're going to take your questions online at NBC4i.com and also on Facebook Live as we're just getting our feed up and running there. So you'll be able to weigh in on whatever you want to talk about today related to Buckeye football as we transition out of the Cincinnati game and get ready for the Hoosiers. So, Bill, let's start with UC last week. Your big takeaway, the big thing you learned about Ohio State last week was what?
That we're a growing, getting better team both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
We did progress, and they say your biggest step is between the first game and second game, and I think in many ways that did take place.
Where did you see the growth more so, offensively or defensively?
You know, I think a little, yes, it's a tough call right there. Probably offensively, for the simple fact that, you know, Justin Fields, being the leader of the whole unit, he showed more improvement this week in especially not only picking out receivers and keeping the ball alive, but, you know, making decisions quicker. You know, quarterbacks got to make decisions quick, especially when you get a big pass rush and things like that. And I think he did a good job of making the right decisions.
I think it's crazy. I think in the first two games of his season a year ago, Dwayne Haskins accounted for 9 touchdowns. They were all touchdown passes. Through his first 2 games, Justin Fields has 9 touchdowns. 3 of them are rushing.
There you go.
And I think that does give you some of the maybe that might be more telling stat than you might realize, because people were curious whether Ohio State could transition back into a run-pass option quarterback smoothly as they have. And one of the concerns, I think, was they were so explosive a year ago in the throw game. How efficient were they going to be? How effective were they going to be? Making a style change, if you will, back to Justin Fields. Bill, they might be better, because they're giving defenses more of a run threat now than they did a year ago.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot of guys talking on the radio and television about comparing the two.
Right.
But they're completely 2 different style quarterbacks. I don't think you need to compare these guys. I think, obviously, you know, you take a guy like Dwayne Haskins was a tremendous quarterback at throwing the football, put in tight places, did things like that. And Justin Fields is showing the ability to do some of those things right now, but obviously he's much more a dual threat. You can just look at the play calling by the Buckeyes. You know, more lean toward the run game this year. And last year we knew we were going to win a game passing. Now it's much tougher on opposing defense to defend this quarterback.
Take your questions at Facebook Live. If you're watching us at NBC4, the NBC4 Facebook page, go ahead and log in. Send us your questions, your comments, whatever you want to let us know about what you saw against Cincinnati and what you maybe hope to see this coming week. Bill, let's talk about defense for a second here, because Ryan Day said it, one of his first comments after the game. We won the line of scrimmage.
Yes.
And it's going to be hard for anybody they play, and I mean anybody.
Right.
I'm talking anybody they play, to handle Ohio State and their defensive line. Not just the first 4, but the next 4. And quite possibly the next 4, because they are that good and that deep. That depth, Bill, second, third, and fourth quarters will really start to show up, I think, as they move forward in more competitive games.
Yeah, it wears on the defense. It really does. When you get fresh guys coming at you, for an offensive lineman, for example, you got fresh guys coming at you for 4 quarters. Man, that's a rough day. That's a long day.
Yeah.
The stat that I think is the most important right now in relation to that particular part of the game up front is we are giving up less than 2 yards per carry. Now, you imagine that, less than 2 yards per carry. That means teams are forcing to throw the ball much more than they'd like to.
And obviously, you know, the level of competition will go up. Those numbers will change. It's early. You know this. You're smart. You know what's up. However, I think it does give you an indication of the growth from a year ago to now, where the priorities are in the defense, the stylistic change, the mental approach to playing the game defensively has dramatically changed. I don't mean that as an insult to the prior coaching staff or the prior players. That's not my intention. My point is that you can see the players mentally feel free. They feel like their objective is to see ball, get ball. Now, it's not quite that simple, but the basics of the philosophy here are to run to the football, get the guy on the ground, and try again. Eliminate the big play. Greg Madison was talking about that yesterday. That's how you eliminate the big play. You run as a group to the football, get the ball on the ground, and you start over. That mentality seems to have really stuck with this group. They knew they were good. They knew they were individually very talented, very athletic, highly recruited players. That wasn't the issue. It was how they were trying to play. Now it looks like they found a philosophy that fits the talent.
Yeah, and I think they still have a chip on their shoulder.
Sure.
They still want to prove that last year was a fluke in a lot of ways defensively.
Mm-hmm.
They're playing with a lot of confidence right now. And it's kind of a relaxed confidence, not that they're going to just let up. What I'm talking about is they're not mentally tied up. You know, they know what to do, and they're more of a reactor instead of a thinker on the football field. And when you got guys doing that, and you're seeing it in the tackling in the open field, you're seeing it in the way they swarm to the football, trying to create a turnover when you make the hit, the second, third, fourth guy. They're playing with a lot of confidence right now. Big test this week, but a lot of confidence right now.
Certainly are. We're going to talk about Indiana coming up here shortly, so you have an idea of what to expect from that. A couple Facebook comments here. William wants to know, why did Ohio State drop in the standings? And I think that's a fair question because, yeah, they won their game 42-0, right? So how did they fall down? Well, a lot of that, I think, is a big part of who you play. And because LSU went on the road to Texas, and in the fourth quarter, Joe Burrow made some phenomenal throws, they won a tough football game. And I think it wouldn't be right to not reward LSU for going on the road and getting that win and moving them into the top 5 where they probably belong. They're probably that good this year. We'll find out later in the SEC season. But I think it was worth it at this point in the season to move them ahead, not as punishment to Oklahoma and Ohio State and all those teams that are playing so good, but I just think they deserved it.
And it gives the Buckeyes a challenge.
Sure.
They don't think we're as good as LSU. Okay, you're right. But, hey, at the end of the year, you can count the number of undefeated teams will be on one hand, if that.
Yeah.
So, you know, nothing to worry about this early. And you're right, because of this big win for LSU away from home against a good football team. But, again, long way to go. We're fine right where we're at.
Yeah, nothing matters. I'll also remind you the polls don't matter.
Not at all.
I mean, they don't even have an impact on the college football playoff rankings. So it's a way it's a metric basically to measure interest in what people think about the progress of the teams as they go through the year. But again, it's progress. It's 2 weeks in. They had a great win. They deserve it. We'll see week 7, week 8, week 9, how it goes along. Here is a question about I don't know the name, and I apologize for that, but I want to see a comment is, I need to see more from the wide receiver group. Interesting comment, Bill. Well, they're not.
What?
Well, and here's what I think they might mean. Obviously, they're all really good players, and they go really deep at receiver. But they're clearly, because of the offense they're running this year, they're not going to throw it every down.
Right.
So I think the idea that if you're comparing it to last year's numbers, you're right. They're probably not going to be the same.
No, absolutely
But
not.
that doesn't mean they're bad.
Right. And, you know, spreading around, who would have thought 2 games into the season, one of the guys with the most receivers would be a tight end?
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah.
A young guy.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of those situations. We have a lot of tools, a lot of weapons to go to. And I think the one thing I admire about this coaching staff, I think they do a really good job of game planning so far, I've seen, against a particular opponent that they're going up against.
Yeah.
First game, obviously, they knew the tight end game would be really good against Florida Atlantic. Get to Cincinnati, a little different story. Tight ends didn't get the ball as much, or at all, actually. In different formations. You've seen a variety of formations. The Buckeyes are smart in these early games. I always like to do that too as a coach, is you give the opponents a lot of different looks. So they got to prepare for everything. They don't know for sure what your game plan is going to be against them. Make them think and make them work.
Yeah, make them work harder for stuff they might never see. That's time wasted is good for you, if you will. So about Bill, some of the receiver work, one of the topics of discussion yesterday at the Ryan Day news conference, talking to a couple of the other players, including receiver KJ Hill, is that Ohio State has not run many shallow crosses this year. And you saw them make bank on that a year ago, where receivers, especially KJ, who's so good in that regard, running across the middle of the field, they haven't run a lot of that this year. But again, that's a product of what they're doing offensively. If you feel like there is, for example, they were picking Cincinnati apart sideline to sideline Saturday because that's where they were giving them. That's where the depth was. And so they just ran shallow outs, 8 yards here, 8 yards here, fields through an accurate football, first down, first down, first down. Well, why would you not take that? It doesn't mean they don't still have shallow crosses in the arsenal, but we're 2 games into the season, and my point is you take what a defense gives you. If they're playing up with linebackers, if they're watching that, then there's really no reason to run that play because you know where they're not, outside. Exactly. So I understand that, you know, if somebody is looking at it and saying, well, they're not as productive, well, maybe that's why.
Well, yeah, and what you're not seeing this year, you're not seeing as much man coverage. You're seeing more zone coverage. So you don't run crossing patterns in the zone. There'll be somebody there.
Right.
You know, use crossing patterns to try to basically pick defenders off.
Right.
And those things. So we're not seeing as much of that. I know Cincinnati for a lot of the game was trying to play 2 deep safeties and playing a lot of underneath stuff, but really not as much man as we've been seeing.
Yeah. Always keep an eye for that pick play down near the goal line. The Garrett Wilson touchdown, I think Ohio State had a pretty good block in there. I don't remember who it was. It might have been Ruckert. I'm not sure. But Eric Bunting says if the Buckeyes win out, they are in. And I think he's, in terms of the college football playoff, it's that simple. I think we could say that at the start of most seasons. If you're an undefeated football team, in all likelihood, if you go through the Big Ten undefeated, you're going to be in the Final Four of the college football playoff, no matter what happens around the country. I think the curious element of that is what else happens around the league. Because, you know, you got Michigan State right now playing at a very high level, but offensively we're very curious what they're going to be in the middle and later into October and November. Are they going to be any good on offense? I don't know. Right. Defensively, we expect they're going to be good all year long. Michigan, they almost flushed it Saturday. I mean, it was awful. And that is, to me, a big concern. Obviously, playing a team that has a unique offensive style, that is a 1-week preparation, and you kind of, you know, push it off and you move on with your year. So that's my concern, is how good's the rest of the league. We still don't know that yet. I think the middle of the league is better. I think teams like Minnesota, Indiana, that quality of team is better this year than I think they were a year ago. And that may be your litmus test, if you will. Maybe not at the upper end, but at the middle.
Yeah, I think you take, obviously, right now you think going into November, which is a long way away, that the traditional powers are still going to be pretty good. It's going to be us. It's going to be, you know, if Michigan can find an offense, they'll be there. Penn State's growing with some young guys and scoring a lot of points. The team that I think is a surprise team right now is this Maryland team. How good are they?
Oh, my gosh, they can't stop
scoring. We know
scoring.
they got good skilled players. We saw that last year. So if they can keep it up, they can definitely be somebody in the hunt.
I mean, they're averaging 74 a game or whatever it is. I mean, pretty good for the basketball team.
That's right. They scored more in the first 2 games than they probably scored in a decade. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Mike Loxley's doing a great job there. And interesting Mike Loxley story. You know, you think about his background as a head coach. He'd been miserably bad.
Oh, yeah.
He'd had terrible struggles, but he went to Alabama and helped develop their offense a little bit. That was how he came up and what he was known for. But as a head coach, he'd been awful. But the power of a quarterback. They get Josh Jackson, the transfer quarterback from Virginia Tech. They get him in there to College Park, and you put an offensive mind with a big quarterback and a big arm, and you give him some direction, and voila. Now, granted, they haven't played. Now, I think Syracuse win was a good win.
Yeah,
Syracuse might not be a top 20 team, but I think it was a good win for them. You're right. That's a one, and they're coming to Columbus this year.
Thank goodness.
We'll see him in person.
Yeah, big question mark. But you're seeing this all over the country, Jerod. You're seeing with all these big name transfer quarterbacks are all performing at a high level. And I tell you what, this is something for programs that can really get turned around. Just a key guy, the guy that touches the ball every play. Yeah, no doubt. More questions, you can bring them on to us at Facebook Live. If you're watching us on NBC4's Facebook page, simply load a question here into the comments and we'll get it and we'll read it for you on the air. Also checking us out today on NBC4i.com. Coach Conley and I are going to talk about Indiana now because that's the game upcoming Saturday. First dip into Big Ten play, first dip into a road trip for Ohio State. Bill, I think it's a place where Buckeye fans can get tickets for road games. First of all, they usually have more of the stadium than Indiana has. And Indiana hasn't beaten Ohio State since '88. But that does not mean this is some pushover game that doesn't matter. We recall last year, it was a fourth quarter game. Ohio State had to throw a touchdown to Terry McLaurin to start to pull away in the game. They have traditionally played the Buckeyes pretty well, made the game a struggle in the fourth quarter. What do you expect Saturday? Well, first of all, Indiana to us has always been, except in a few occasions when we've blown them out, they've been like the gnat at picnic. You know, you're always swatting them. Oh, come on, go away, go away. And they stay in there and they fight and they fight. And initially they got some skilled players. You can talk about a quarterback, a young guy, but I tell you what, he's throwing the heck out of the ball. They got some receivers that are good. And their offensive line, for as young as they are, and I think that could be an advantage for us coming in. They really are protecting them pretty good, but they have only one senior, I believe, on offensive line. That's their center, And so they're going to face the best defensive line they'll probably face all year in the Buckeyes.
They have a first-year starter at tackle, which I think is a big concern going against this defensive end group. I think that's a bit of a problem for them. However, redshirt freshman quarterback Penix, who blew out his ACL a year ago and lost that year, came back, and he's looked really good the first 2 weeks. And he is a dual-threat guy. But they don't rely on that. They throw the ball very well. Whop Fillier is their receiver who's got an all-world name. And, we saw him here a year ago. Great talent. Had a very nice season for the Hoosiers a year ago. They don't have a dominant running back per se, but they don't necessarily rely on that too much, at least through 2 games so far. They didn't play great competition. Played Ball State. They played Eastern and Illinois. So they did not play great teams so far. I think from the Indiana perspective, I think the speed challenge of Ohio State is going to be a significant bump from what they've played.
Yeah, but this is a game that's going to test our defense. You got Stevie Scott, the running back that had over 1,000 last year. You got her. You got Nick Westbrook come back as receiver. But they have a good tight end they can throw to. And so I think the job is really going to – this is the first real test for the defense. Like we said at the beginning, that they still got a chip on their shoulder. If we can play great defense in this game, hopefully put a good rush on the quarterback, force some bad throws, make some picks, and I'm waiting for this defense, mark it down, take it to the bank. It would not surprise me if we don't score on defense this game.
Is that right? Why so?
I just think that they'll put it up enough to give us the opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
And these guys are hungry in that secondary. The Buckeye secondary is playing really good, and they're probably challenging each other. Who's going to get the first pick for a touchdown?
Yeah, run one back for a pick six.
There you go.
I think what also be interesting about this game in particular, with Dobbins having such a great game, his first career outing. Remember, that was at Indiana a couple years ago, and he got in there. Mike Weber was hurt. It was day of the game. We found out he was going to start as a true freshman. He was going to start his first game, and he went in there and played tremendous football. And it's almost like that was his best game to this point. I mean, he's had other very, very nice performances, obviously, but that was the one that I think sticks out with most people because they didn't see it coming. Last week, he put his foot in the turf and ran a little bit, 140 yards. Coaches were very pleased. He saw some gaps and stormed through them. The 60-yarder, he was never touched. I mean, he made the right cut, but those guys kept him off him very well. And I think he's a curiosity. If they can ride him a little bit and withstand some of that emotion early in the game on a road situation, open in Big Ten. That was a formula that worked before. I could see him going back there too.
Yeah, and I think that's the other part of the big change offensively, the big improvement from the week 1 was J.K. Dobbins himself. He had the game we were expecting him to have every game. And you know what? Think about this. For the first time in a couple years now, we have 2 running threats that prove the ability to make a long run for the touchdown. And one of them's our quarterback, and the other one is our tailback. Yeah. But then you look at a guy like Master Teague who's came on, who gives us another dimension. He's more the, that hybrid fullback tailback guy, a bigger guy. But this guy, decent speed, and he's putting up better numbers too. So, and you need to spell that tailback. You want your tailback at Ohio State to take the ball between 20 to 25 times a game. You need another guy that'll take it about 10 to 12 times a game.
Yeah, no doubt. You need somebody to spell them. And obviously it's a physical season and a physical schedule ahead, so you want to have that guy ready to go. Getting ready, as you've done this many times in your coaching career, you're getting ready to play a first road game. Yeah. What is critical from a coaching standpoint when you go to build a game plan, understanding you're going to have, no matter who you're playing on the road, what are some things you have to build in to help your players?
Well, the first thing you do, I always thought going on the road, you want to put together a script. The plays, your first 10 or so plays you want to run, because you don't want anything in that script that will give, as Woody would say, the other team a chance to cheer for their team. You want to make them sit on their hands, what Woody used to say. We make them sit on their hands by not giving them anything. Don't give them a chance to get the football. So be smart, be sound. And same thing a little bit defensively. You don't want to do anything, you don't want to play man coverage when you got they got the ball deep in their own territory. Don't give them a big play. And that's the one thing this defense has done so good this year, and you hit it a while ago, is we're not giving up that big play. Almost last year it was one of those things we were thinking, oh God, when's it going to happen? When's it going to happen?
It was inevitable.
And it was just when. But now, challenge, I don't expect a big play by Indiana, especially running the football.
I wanted to ask you because you coached with some incredible people at Ohio State. Obviously, you coached against Indiana, if not every year, most years. And there are some great Lee Corso moments that everybody seems to have. So Lee Corso, of course, the head coach at Indiana for many years before he went on his game day fame.
Oh, yeah.
There's this legendary story about Lee when Indiana had come to Columbus for a game, and they went up 7-0 in the game, early in the game. And the legend of the story is that Corso had a camera with him, and he pulled a camera out and took a picture of the scoreboard that said Indiana 7, Ohio State nothing, just to have proof that at one point they had the lead on the Buckeyes. I don't know if that story is true at all or not. What do you know about some of the great Corso stories? Or what's a good one you can share?
Well, Lee, that story is a true story.
That's a true story?
But I think it happened at Indiana.
Indiana?
Yeah, and he called his captains up, called a timeout right before halftime, and had them stand beside him, and they took the picture of the scoreboard. It is absolutely true. One of the great stories at Indiana, the team didn't come out to the field right on time. We were all warming up and all those things, and, where's Indiana? Where's Indiana? All of a sudden, through the gates, comes one of those Archer Treacher 2-story English buses. And he's hanging out the side, waving at the crowd, and they're going crazy. He always did something to try to get his teams fired up. And he had an amazing Sunday show on. I was coaching at Middletown High School at that time. So I'd watch his shows. Were great. Well, one time he's standing there with a mule. And they got beaten by somebody, and he says, "You're probably wondering who the real jackass is." That's the typical. One time he's in a coffin. Yeah. And coffin lid opens up. He raises up out of the coffin, looks at the camera, and says, "You may think Indiana football's dead, but it's not." So it was a great showman.
A showman.
It kept him the job for 10 years before they fired him.
That's right. Hey, that's job security. Be if nothing else, be entertaining.
Be entertaining.
And that's the thing about Indiana football. Is obviously they don't have great tradition there, but they're good players in Indiana. And if they can get the best players in Indiana, they're going to be very good. The problem is many of the best players in Indiana don't play there. For example, and Ohio State's roster is a great example of that. Craig Young's the freshman who came in this year, highly touted kid. They've got him playing linebacker right now. One of the better prospects Indiana's had for a while. On the starting side, for example, on the defense, Pete Werner from Indianapolis. Right. Terry McLaurin off last year's team from Indianapolis. The big offensive lineman this year, the freshman from Indianapolis who came in. They're recruiting Indiana so well, and the problem for the Hoosiers is they can't get their own best players. Yeah, and there's high school football in Indiana is good, but it's not as good as Ohio. And so what you have, everybody recruits the very best, and you have also Notre Dame right in state. So and Purdue. And Purdue. Yeah. So you got to beat those guys as well as everybody coming in from out of state. Yeah. Buckeyes, man, they just burrow in everywhere. I'll tell you what, if they, the whole argument about Ohio State is the same thing. If they just get the best kids in Ohio, they're going to be pretty good. And they actually got a really good recruit yesterday, a kid from Ironton, who you've seen, by the way. Yes, sir. Linebacker from there. Let's a quick recruiting update on him. He's a junior, so he's not for this class. He's for the next class. What do you know about him? I'll tell you what, he is a heck of a football player. He'll remind you a little bit of a cross between Werner and Tough Borland. He's a tough, physical guy. We recruited a kid out of Ironton a long time ago called Reggie Arden. Reggie Arden type of guy. A tough guy, athletic. He also carries the ball sometimes. So he's a really good, versatile athlete, a guy that should be a really good player here at Ohio State. And one of those guys will contribute on special teams. Yeah, I forget his name. The kid from Ironton. Yeah, it slips my mind right now, too. I just forgot it. That's sad. Man, that's tragic. I owe everybody a Coke. We'll finish up here a little bit. That's right, Reed Carrico. That's it, Reed Carrico. Thank you, Brian. You're a lifesaver. All right, we'll do a couple quick things here as we look forward to the schedule overall this week. Obviously, Ohio State goes on the road to Indiana. The Big Ten, we're kind of keeping an eye on Michigan, how they bounced back from the Army game last week. Penn State's looked really good, but they did have to rally a little bit with Buffalo. They struggled a little bit there. And Buffalo's not a rough MAC program, but they have not. They didn't have the year I thought a lot of people thought they would have last year. OU, by the way, losing at Pitt. Now they go to my Thundering Herd of Marshall this week. There you go. That's a big game for OU. Suddenly, they go to 1-2 if they fall there. Yeah, going to Huntington, there'll be a lot of green, both teams. An excessive amount of green. Excessive amount. And I'll tell you what,
It's. I watched the game, the Marshall game, the other day, and they got some players
Against Boise?
against Boise State, and I think OU will have their hands. You know, obviously we like the Bobcats, but I'll tell you, in Huntington, it's a tough place to play.
Yeah.
And they got some extremely talented, skilled athletes at Marshall.
They're pretty good. Well, it'll be a fun one to watch this weekend. Cincinnati has their rivalry game with Miami. Did want to bring up this point about the Cincinnati game because a lot of people saw the play with Kyrique McDonald, McDonald, I should say, the linebacker safety for Cincinnati who suffered the seizure in the game. So yesterday, one of the things that people have noticed most about watching the replay of that play is that KJ Hill, the receiver for Ohio State, is lined up across from him. And you can see at the snap of the football, he is hesitant to block him. Mm-hmm. And in talking to KJ yesterday, he told us what happened. He looked at him because he's getting ready to block him. He looked at him and saw his eyes start to roll back in his head. And he recognized the signs of a seizure because KJ's grandmother has a history of seizures.
Wow.
So he was able to identify what a seizure looked like, and that's why he jogged out there but in no way tried to block anybody. Mm-hmm. And then when the play was over, he turned back and looked for the training staff. Yep. They were already out on the field.
Right.
They were already running out. So I asked KJ that question yesterday at the news conference. I thought it was a moment of character in a game where he was thinking, and he recognized a medical emergency, a real one, and did the right thing, the classy thing. And I think Ohio State fans deserve a tremendous amount of credit for the way they reacted to it. It was obviously extraordinarily scary. We had no idea what was happening at the time. And the way people handled it, the support for everyone, I thought was classy, awesome, about as well as you can handle it. The question I wanted to ask you, Bill, as a coach, if you have a player who has a medical condition like that, how do you weigh their wishes to play versus a number of factors, including your team's best foot forward, potential legal concerns, liabilities? How do you handle all that as a coach?
Well, obviously, you got to rely on your medical staff because they're the experts, and they know how dangerous the situation really is. And in this situation, like you mentioned, Jerod, I thought the thing impressed me the most how quickly our medical staff got on the field.
Everybody got there.
You know, surrounded the guy and stuff like that. And that's not a good thing to watch. And they were covering him up so you couldn't see it and all stuff. But it goes down to the medical staff. And you got to make a decision because, again, in the medical staff, I can promise you this. Medical doctors, they will not put a guy on the field if they think it's dangerous. If they do, they know their reputation and their livelihood is at stake.
Right.
So you just have to, count on that. I assume, like anything, you talk about concussions or anything. You after a series of them, then it's got to be a decision. Hey, it's over.
Right. You
can't do it anymore. You got a long life ahead of you. Don't do something that might hurt you for the long run.
No doubt. And I think coaches are more in tune with that now than maybe they've ever been before.
Absolutely.
For a number of reasons. I mean,
oh yeah,
liability is a big a part of that equation as well, not just what's right.
Yeah.
But
Woody used to say, if your guy's on the ground and he's on the ground, get up.
Right.
If you're hurt, you can't get up.
Right.
So we'll find out.
Find out.
Here's a great story, Woody story that we're playing a game, and this is the year before I actually went there.
Okay.
And a guy named Bo Ryan. Well, remember Bo Ryan? He tackled a guy, opposing team, on the kickoff. He was on kickoff coverage, and he tackles the guy, and over by their bench. And back then, if you got hurt on the field, it cost you a timeout. So you don't want to cost your team timeout.
Right.
So Bo, he fell down 3 times trying to get to our sideline. He was all dizzy and stuff like that. He rolls out of bounds at the foot of Woody. That's a heck of a job, Bo, heck of a job. But you didn't have to do that. Why, Coach? He says, because you knocked that guy out. That guy was 1 yard from his sideline, out cold.
Oh.
So it has changed a world of difference today.
It's eye-opening.
You give me all these stories.
That's a physical sport now. So we're looking forward to it this weekend. We will, of course, have coverage for you all week long as we get ready for Indiana here. Come back and join us Friday night, 7:30, the Gridiron Nation here on NBC4. We'll get you, Coach and I, all coached up, ready to go for the Indiana game. Reviewing some of the curious elements we saw from the victory over Cincinnati and what's at stake for Ohio State here as they move forward in what could be a very promising season. It's been an excellent start, perhaps even better than a lot of folks were hoping that they would see. Thanks so much for joining us here online, NBC4i.com and Facebook Live. We'll see you back here next Wednesday, 2 o'clock. We'll have the Gridiron Nation online with Coach Conley. We'll see you then.